Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. Let's check out JASMY Coin's price chart and what happened since the last time that we talked about JASMY. And I think in the previous update, we were right around here. And the idea was that, well, okay, there's a very good chance this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that, if you remember, specifically made me say, yeah, you know what, we should be a little bit patient and also quite a bit careful. Why? Because sure, maybe this is a correction as structure, especially when you compare it timing wise to this sharp bounce back from the lows to about the highs, which was basically yes, something like a 100% move on the upside. However, we said due to the fact that we do not have overlapping of the waves between our pullbacks up during this whole phase on the downside, you know what, this is actually not a characteristic of a corrective movement. That's why we have to be patient and see, are we going to have from these areas a bit of a move on the upside or not? If we get a bounce back, okay, even that is not necessarily going to be an optimistic sign, and at that point we have to pay full attention to the shape of our bounce back. And what happened? Well, not only we did not get a bounce back in here, unfortunately what we were afraid of pretty much played out, meaning yes, this was an impulse, and in it we went down and took the lowest low all the way down here about, let's say, generally half a cent area. Now, as you can see at the moment in JASMY, we are starting to see some signs of life. However, I would argue we still need to be a little bit patient. Why is that? You see, there we go. My field of works is Elliott Waves, and in terms of Elliott, if you want to argue in here we're going to have our final low, then okay, off of the lowest low in this region, you have to be able to find a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave on the upside. This specific scenario is called an impulse. Rules for it are, we should not have overlapping of the waves between our wave 2 and 4, and in any kind of 5 wave, our wave 3 should not be the smallest wave, and for our sub waves, as you can see, we're gonna have 5 wave up into wave 1, 3, and 5. And for wave 2 and 4, we can consider so many different possibilities. Let's say, I don't know, maybe like a WXY into wave 2 followed by an ABC into wave 4. Now, after completing a 5 wave, even according to the most optimistic scenario, one way or the other, we are going to start having from these areas a bit of a move on the downside, and pay attention to this important point. On a higher degree, this is going to be into 1, into wave 2, and then you can expect good move up into wave 3 and 4 and 5. Now, having said all this, let's go on maybe some lower time frames on 15-minute time frame and see what is going on. First things first, I would argue the only reason that we are right now getting this bounce back from the lows to about here, so far this is about like a 20% move on the upside, which is definitely not that bad. The only reason for why we are getting this thing, I would argue, comes down to classic TA, meaning supports and resistances, and the fact that in here we do have a bit of a support area. Is it like a very strong support? Not necessarily, but hey, it is so far at least doing the job, and we are getting a bounce from it. Now, the question is, can we argue this is an impulse? Immediately, the answer is probably going to be no. Why? Because clearly between our supposedly wave 4 and 2 in here, if you want to assume this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it is clear that we are absolutely having overlapping of the waves. Also, I want you to pay attention to this phase on the downside, because this does seem to be a very strong move down. Probably if you go on some lower time frames, I think you are able to say this is 1, this is 2, and then wave 3 and 4 and 5. So I'm gonna say probably we had in here a correction on the downside from here and not the highest side in form of an ABC flat structure. And here is the best scenario that I got for you. You know what? Let's be actually generous. Let's be optimistic and argue that from this point, this is an ABC in form of a running flat structure, not an expanded flat, since according to this pattern, we did not take the low of our A-leg. Okay, even if you want to be optimistic like this, then okay, you can say maybe this is 5 wave up into a wave 1, and it is, by the way, a 5 wave. I have done an Elliott Wave analysis on it before I hit the record. Yes, this is a 5 wave, no problem at all. You can say this is into a wave 1, followed by a correction for wave 2, and here's the deal. If truly the bullish scenario is in play, okay, our move up has to basically accelerate in JASMY into wave 3 and 4 and 5. Why did I say it has to sort of kind of accelerate? Because in most cases, wave 3 Elliott's wave voice is known to be quite a strong and sharp move on the upside. Now, here's a very important point. Let's not even consider that acceleration. Let's argue maybe our move down is going to continue a little bit more. Okay, then here's the thing. Please pay attention. What really matters in JASMY in here is actually what we are going to do after this short-term move up, okay? Because if we end up having a consolidation and then another move up, completing the subbase for an impulse, great sign. On the other hand, what you do not want to see is from here a rather strong move on the downside in form of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without a lot of overlapping of the waves. Why is this not going to be necessarily an optimistic sign? Because this is essentially suggesting you are having a correction up, probably in form of, there we go, an A, B, C, a zigzag structure, and for our subwaves, we're gonna have 5 up into A, correction for wave B. Let's consider an ABC, doesn't really matter a whole lot, honestly, and then another 5 up into C. And if I just go on the live chart, okay, so assuming that from here the bearish case is happening and we want to have a very strong impulsive structure down, okay, this can be just a simple A, B, C at that point, meaning what? Our move down is going to continue, and in it we are going to take the lows once more in here about basically half a cent area. But at that point, taking the lows is not necessarily going to be the biggest problem for us. You see, the biggest problem comes down to what is going on at that point to classic TA, because under here, again, I told you before, we really do not have like a whole lot of strong support. So I would argue if we start going down in JASMY Coin and take this low, at that point, maybe it is sort of kind of going to be confirmed that, yep, we have broken this level. And since under it, we do not have a lot of strong support, well, odds are our move down from here is going to continue for another, let's say, maybe 10 to 15% in order to reach to about the lower band of this region, which is, yes, absolutely a very strong cluster of support areas. But between these two regions, I'll be honest with you, we really do not have a whole lot. Now, here is my final point. At what point in JASMY can we argue, yep, the bearish scenario is playing out and we need to be a bit more patient and careful? I would argue it's going to be that moment when, in a very strong impulsive manner, we end up taking this right in here, very important low, about, let's say, 0.576 of a cent. Why is this important? Because never mind that 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5 wave scenario. Let's even argue maybe we're having some sort of other bullish case. Even in those cases, you can say maybe these are a series of 1, 2s, meaning what? This can be maybe a 1, 2, and then big move up into wave 3, 4, 5, and on a higher degree, that one is going to be into this wave 3, correction for 4, another move into wave 5, and even that one, guess what? Is going to be into wave 3 and 4 and 5. And even if you want to say, well, okay, from here to about the lows, we are having an ABC running flat, fair enough, then okay, in that case, this is just going to be a wave 1 to about here, followed by a correction for wave 2, and again, good move up into wave 3, 4, 5 in order to confirm that, yep, we have hit our final low. Now, here's a very important point. The invalidation point in all of these scenarios, once more, like we said earlier, actually comes down to this very, very key low right around the 0.576 of a cent region. So let me be very clear. What you do not want to see in JASMY under any kind of circumstances is actually a very strong move down in order to take the loss. If we take them, be very, very careful and also be quite a bit bearish. I'm not saying that you should actually prepare to take a short position. I'm just saying manage your expectations, because at that point, there's a good chance our move down is going to continue. And my final point, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I fully believe that in BTC, we are extremely, extremely close to reach to our final low. However, whether we are actually there yet or not, that in my view could be up for debate. So I'm going to say maybe in Bitcoin, we should consider having one more move on the downside. And if in BTC we want to go down, what do you think is going to happen to a lot of altcoins? I'm going to say, yep, those are probably going to go down as well. And JASMY may not necessarily be an exception, or let me just tell you this. JASMY being an exception should, under any kind of circumstances, not be your primary case. Again, once more concluding what we said earlier. Sure, we do have probably the right setup for a bullish structure, but number one, if we want to be bullish, we have to see a continuation of our move up, then consolidation, then another move on the upside. And even right in here is not going to be a buy opportunity. You should just around the highs be a bit more patient and see a bit of a pullback down. And in this whole process, okay, if you are seeing the correct subwaves and the right structures, fair enough, right around the lows can be a beautiful buying opportunities for you. As long as you are not seeing that though, I would argue it's a little bit too soon to jump into any kind of unnecessary bullish conclusions. And again, my final point, on the other hand, under any kind of circumstances, if you want to remain bullish, you do not want to see a good move down in JASMY in order to take this important slope. So for now, all eyes on this thing and see what are we going to do with it. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in JASMY. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.